Thank you, Madam President. And further remarks on the underlying bill. We've already heard various things already, about it. And, in my remarks, I'm not referring to anyone personally, and I'm not getting into the merits or not of whatever this money has been spent on and might be spent on. This is really about a process that the Senate and the legislature is following, or in my opinion, failing to outright purposefully follow, and how the public's money, which we term taxpayer money, is being spent with regards to decisions being made, how those decisions are being made. Those are tremendously serious issues. And when we talk with our constituents, and I know I spend a lot of time in the 13 towns I'm proud to represent, talking with people, listening to them, hearing what they have to say, some of the reasons there is continued distrust of state government, regardless of political party affiliation, is number one, people who are paying the taxes don't really know, because they're not being told, how their money is being used. And number two, they are not given at times the fundamental proper opportunities to have their voices heard about how their money is being used in a representative democracy. Those are really major issues. As a former town official for 16 years, I took great pains to make certain that a town commission I chaired, people knew exactly how we spent that money, and took great lengths to make certain people had multiple opportunities to have their voices heard. Not just an opportunity, but multiple opportunities. There's a distinction. It's one thing if you give someone one opportunity. It's different if you give them multiple. It's a very different scenario if you give them zero opportunity. And what we see this process here is completely opposite what representative democracy is about, not just in the United States of America, but in the state of Connecticut. And part of that is, in a representative democracy, people elect officials to represent them. And they want those representatives to let them know what's going on and to give them opportunities in their government. Remember, state government, like federal government, it is a government of, for, and by the people. Doesn't get any more to the point than that. And when they're not given an opportunity, like today, to weigh in on staggering amounts of money, of their taxpayer money, I agree they should get upset. And they should seek peaceful and appropriate redress, meaning they should be talking with those elected officials who represent them, who want to give them an opportunity, and those elected officials who not only aren't giving them an opportunity, but don't seem to care they're not giving them an opportunity. And when we talk about a representative democracy not giving people opportunities on the money being spent, such as in this bill, that sends a terrible message on, especially on an opening day and on the first serious debate and vote that the legislature is taking. And that's bad. I don't know how one explains that when one goes to civics classes in high school and we talk about the importance of being involved as a member of society and of a community. That people shouldn't be afraid to let themselves be heard through the proper processes that government sets up. Yet, government turns around and pulls the rug on those processes and says, we've had this fund, it's supposed to expire today per law, but now we want to keep spending the money, make it even looser, and more unaccountable for how the money is going to be spent, and we'll extend it out through some part of the end of June of 2027. We're actually in the beginning of February of 2026. And we're not going to give members of the public opportunity to be heard. There's a reason we have public hearings, but I guess we don't need a reason to not hold a public hearing on this. But yet, as we've heard many times during debates in this very chamber on things that get brought up in strike-all amendments, well, the concept was already heard in a public hearing, or this was already heard in a public hearing, so that covers us. I have no idea what type of cogent argument, coherent argument one can make when one outright brings something like this up and no public input, no public hearing. That's bad way to make public policy. And that's a bad process to follow. And we may hear kind of arguments, well, there are various programs we need to be covering, and we may hear this and that, about reasons why this money should be spent. But I'm talking about the process in divorcing the public away from being involved in providing input, asking questions in a representative democracy. I have yet to hear any real serious argument. Now, some people may say it's an emergency, and whether or not it really is or isn't, but we're very mindful that during true emergencies during the history of our country, for example, during World War II, the Constitution does not disappear. The fundamentals of representative democracy do not disappear. And surely during this, the state constitution doesn't disappear, and representative democracy does not disappear. Delegating sole authority over the expenditure of taxpayer money, especially money that we're talking here, that is $330,811,954. That's a huge amount of money. Delegating that authority on how it's going to be doled out and spent to any single individual, it doesn't matter who that individual is in the governor's seat, whether a Republican or a Democrat or not, but to that one individual, especially when the legislature is in session, as we have as of this morning, and without the opportunity for the public input. That is bad public policy. And I can go on an hour just using the word bad to describe as an adjective relative to the word policy. And it undermines, as I've said, the foundations of representative democracy and democratic governance. Those are not minor issues. And if anything we should uphold in the legislature, surely we can agree that we should be upholding that. And I don't see a reason why we should be inconsistent. Some make the argument that, well, when we were out of session, we needed to do this. But it was with the understanding in that law that passed in a special session that when we went into session, which we have as of this morning, that ended. This is very different. This actually says, if you boil it down to what the public is going to understand, that we know we're in session and we can take a vote any time the chambers want on any matter to spend money and pass it by a majority vote, or in the case of some amendments, not pass it by majority vote along political lines, but to, while we're in session, to cede that authority outright to the executive branch of government. We are a co-equal branch of government, one of three. And for the legislature as a co-equal branch of government to cede one of its fundamental responsibilities over to another branch of government like this is absolutely insane. It is in name. We are in session. So we're going to say, we're here in session making decisions, but we'll let another branch of the government decide how to spend over $330 million, and there is literally no meaningful oversight, nothing to say there needs to be an audit, while we're here making decisions up until we end the session. That's absolutely terrible. And I don't think constituents are going to understand that process. In fact, they're going to be angered by it because they're going to want to know, why do we have a legislative branch if we just cede something like that to the executive branch while we're in session? I look forward to hearing, and I'd be happy to have a lengthy debate about that, but I've yet to hear anything that says why we should be doing that. And again, the legislature can go into a vote anytime it wishes. We can do a special session anytime we wish. We don't have to wait technically for the governor. So if we feel something needs to be done, we can debate it. We can get public input, and we can act. But to say we don't want to act by ceding authority, that is staggering to me, and I can't understand a thinking process that goes into that. And to hide behind saying there's a quote-unquote emergency when we're in session and can do these things if we want, doesn't make any sense either. Gets back to what I said earlier on the prior amendment. When we heard today in joint convention about common sense, I bet you if Thomas Paine were here today and I could take a point of personal privilege and have him here, he wouldn't understand this either. I dare say that. Public funds belong to the people, and we understand that. Not to any one office holder and not to any of us, other than our share of taxes that we pay personally. We need to make certain also that we have the appropriate legislative oversight. This is a lot of money that's already been spent and now proposed to be spent over a lengthy period of time, potentially, over a year. Where is the built-in proper oversight? We don't see that in this wording. In fact, it says that within 24 hours, if, quote-unquote, defined legislative leaders don't vote to disapprove, there's an automatic approval. Shouldn't there actually be an automatic review and affirmative vote to approve? That's a convenient way out. And I think that bespeaks more to the mutation of the process or lack of a process in a representative democracy. It has nothing to do with an emergency. And in an emergency, all the more we should have proper oversight of staggering amounts of taxpayer money, because we don't want things to be rushed in haste and errors are made or money is sent to organizations that don't exist. We've seen that already. Or used inappropriately, and then we have to see state and federal investigations. We've seen that already. It sets up a system ripe for abuse. And it also sets up a system ripe for partisan politics. Picking winners and losers, special interests over the public interest. That's not a process we should follow. And again, separate from whatever we feel the money should be spent on, and I welcome those debates as they occur. Right here now, we're saying we don't want those debates because now we're just going to blatantly cede that. That's terrible and that's wrong, in my opinion. Good public policy and good government demands and dictates that there needs to be openness, transparency, accountability, fair play, inclusivity. That's not an all-encompassing list, but important items on the list. This bill not only ignores all those items, but thumbs a nose at them, and by extension, thumbs a nose at the public, given the lack of any legislative process. in a representative democracy. And the reason we have co-equal branches of government, especially the legislative and the executive, is for checks and balances. And to say we're going to get rid of the checks and balances, and one may say as a technicality, well, it's built into here that certain key people, 6 people, could vote within 24 hours. That's not the intent and spirit of representative democracy. And we know it, even if there's a legal technicality to it. With that said, to further decision-making so that we can uphold representative democracy, so we can uphold making certain that there is wise and proper use of taxpayer money, and that we can uphold the rights of people to know what their government is doing and have their concerns and questions addressed by the very public officials they elect to represent them. Madam President, the clerk is in possession of LCO number 677. I ask, please, that the good clerk call the amendment.
Mr. Clerk.
LCO number 677, Senate Amendment B.
Senator Gordon.
Thank you, Madam President. I move adoption of the amendment, waive the reading, and seek leave to summarize, please.
And let's just wait till we get it up on the board, because I'm not seeing it yet, but then as soon as it is, please do summarize, sir. Senator Gordon, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. And I ask that when a vote be taken, to be taken by roll call, please.
And we will indeed have a roll call vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a very short amendment, but it's an extremely important amendment. And it doesn't take much wording to get to the heart of what I've been talking about. And the heart of what I believe we want to uphold, all 36 of us in this chamber who represent the entirety of the state of Connecticut through this chamber want to uphold, which is representative democracy and making certain that we as the legislative branch of government make certain we remain a co-equal branch of government in action, just not in name. And what this amendment does, and it's common sense, is that if at any time, if this law were to pass, if at any time then a governor during this period of time uses any part of the money at any point in time during that time period, we must have legislative oversight and approval. We must preserve, defend, and protect the proper checks and balances that have served the state of Connecticut for many, many years and generations of people. And what it says is that no expenditure can be made unless both houses of the legislature take a vote, and by a majority vote, at least, approve the expenditures. That's a simple concept. We do that all the time. Well, not all the time in this case, evidently, if this bill passes. But how many times do we do that? Where in order for things to be approved for a bill or for a budget or whatever, it goes through both chambers and there are votes. That's part of what the legislative branch of government does as a co-equal branch of the overall government. That's part of representative democracy. That's checks and balances on the executive branch, which has been built in to the Constitution of the state of Connecticut for very good reasons by people wiser than me, and has been built in to the fundamental structure and organization of our federal government by people wiser than me 250 years ago. What an unbelievable message it would send on the 250th year that we celebrate the United States of America and representative democracy if we don't uphold those fundamental principles, if we say they're not important for a quote-unquote emergency, when we know the Constitution doesn't go away in an emergency, and the rights of people relative to their government doesn't go away. In fact, the rights of government towards its people doesn't go away. There's nothing at all new here in this amendment wanting to make certain the legislature takes a vote. And again, we will hear, I believe, excuses that we should forego those principles of representative democracy because we're in a quote-unquote emergency. It's fine to say that. You can say it as often as you want, but it doesn't make it true. When we are actually in session and can decide any day, any night, what we want to do using taxpayer money. So that argument gets thrown out of the window for good reasons. I'm mindful that given the partisan politics that this amendment will likely fail, but I challenge every single one of my colleagues to think very seriously why they're here as an elected official, having sworn oaths to uphold the Constitution of our state, and why we would not want to do that and not want to defend and protect and serve the people and representative democracy. And for those who do vote no, I welcome hearing from every single one of them here so we know and their constituents know why they feel differently. But I doubt that will happen. With that said, this is common sense. And this is important to do so we're not eroding more the work that's done in the name of the people of Connecticut and not erode more mistrust that's out there in how government operates. So I believe this is a very good amendment to maintain and prevent representative democracy getting weakened and making certain we do the work we're supposed to do, that we've been elected to do, on behalf of our constituents and on behalf of the people of Connecticut, and respecting them and respecting the fact that the money that we're talking about here is their money first and foremost, not our money, not the executive branch's money, not state government's money. It's their money, and they deserve to make certain that we are doing our due diligence and our appropriate actions when decisions are made about their money. And that's a fundamental responsibility of government. That's of the people, for the people, and by the people. So I urge adoption of this amendment, Madam President. Thank you.